Hello, my friends, and welcome to Gamers Tell All, an interview series where I talk to other creatives on the YouTube platform who are working in making analytical videos about video games. And for my first guest, I have the amazing Dead Fox with me. Dead Fox, go ahead and say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Now, Dead Fox, I recently discovered your channel, so if you could just give a quick overview for the people about how you got started on YouTube and sort of what sort of videos you make.
Well, I make like analysis and essay type of videos, and I started by uploading just random clips from my Xbox to YouTube, and then it moved to doing videos about Payday 2, a shooter, a game shooter, and then it moved to analysis videos from that.
Um, and what brought on the shift from doing like a gaming resource to more in-depth analysis?
Well, the YouTuber Nakey Jakey kind of inspired me to switch to more analytical type of videos.
Well, that's.
And no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna interject. Go on.
Oh, and I was just gonna say that I enjoy doing more. I enjoy more doing analytical videos over just gameplay focused videos.
Absolutely. Sort of the reason why I wanted to reach out to you as the first person for this interview series was because your way of doing analysis is very different than mine. It's a lot more personable. It's sort of something that I strive to get into my writing a bit more, but I don't really interject a whole lot of that into my writing. Um, what sort of what sort of drives you to, I guess, uh, include so much of that in your analytical videos?
Um, a lot of analytical videos or essay videos are feel a bit superficial to me, especially from larger channels. And what I wanted to do is simply be more real, be more personal with the audience, so that maybe someone can connect or you know feel more welcomed into the video. If that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense. It's probably the best way to be on the platform, honestly. I guess the whole conceit of YouTube is that we are putting ourselves out there for people to see. It's not just about the thing, but about our experience with it, right?
Hmm.
So the reason that we're here today is to talk about video games, particularly for their potential to affect people's lives. And talking to my audience as much as I'm talking to you right now, the interview is going to follow two main questions, which are what game, what's the most important or significant lesson you ever learned from a game? And then the second question is a discussion about how the game actually taught that lesson through its gameplay and story and all the different aspects that go into making a game. So, Dead Fox, if I could ask you, what game taught you the most? This is a terrible way to phrase the question. Uh, which game taught you the most a significant or important lesson?
Well, that game is Night in the Woods, and oh, you were gonna say
No, go
something,
ahead.
or
Go ahead. I'm just motioning.
okay, okay. That game is Night in the Woods, and the most significant thing I learned from that particular video game is that you have to hold on to something in life. There's a particular quote in the game that says, "At the end of everything, hold on to anything." And sorry for the noise in the
No,
background.
don't worry about it.
Um, and I think that's something that means a lot to me, and that helped me a lot, because at the time when I first played Night in the Woods, I was in a very dark place. I was drinking a lot, and I was very lonely and experiencing anxiety and a lot of things. And that lesson, shit,
No worries.
sorry. Um, that lesson, that thing, at the end of everything, hold on to anything. that hold on to anything part, it's what means a lot to me, because you have to hold on to something in life to basically make things easier. If you don't hold on to anything, if you don't have anything to live for, any hopes or dreams or stuff you want to do, life will just be harder for you. And it doesn't matter where you are, in which point of your life, there's always something to hold on to.
That is, I think, a very important lesson to have for anything. It rings true of a lot of different sort of advice or lessons that I get in from a variety of different realms, different content creators on the platform. I was telling you about how a couple years ago I started to teach myself how to draw again, and the first bit of advice that all of the artist types on YouTube gave was just to start doing it. And that was the hardest bit to actually accept, that just doing it at all, not trying to do it the best way or perfect the first time, was the key to actually getting started. And like, or even with fitness YouTubers, their main advice tends to be always doing anything is better than doing nothing. So always getting up and doing any exercise is significantly better than trying to plan out the best way, the perfect way to get healthier. If you don't mind my asking, when did you run across the game, and what got you interested in playing it in the first place?
I saw it on Steam. It was on sale, and I thought the game looked very interesting because it's so simple. It's a very minimalistic type of game, and nothing like I've ever seen before. And that's what like draw me in. It was very cheap, and I thought, well, I'm gonna play it. And
Yeah,
uh,
the art style did really remind me of like something overly simplistic, like South Park, sort of on purpose, almost like you could believe that the it was made in MS Paint and cleaned up in a different image editor. Um, so if you could, I guess just initially, how did the game go from looking like something really, like a really simple purchase to you, to being something really significant?
well, the first thing I noticed was the dialogue. The dialogue was different compared to other games. For example, the first thing I compared to was Life is Strange, and the problem I had with Life is Strange was that the some of the conversations feel very artificial, very out of touch, and that I think that had to do something with the creators being adults and not Americans and all that. And but in Night in the Woods, the dialogue felt super real and nothing like I've never seen anything like that before. And it just felt so like the characters are anthropomorphic
Mm-hmm.
animals, right? But they felt more human than ever. It was just
Are you saying the
it was
cat and the
interesting.
crocodile and the bear and whatever the other ones were? Uh, there were some animals I couldn't identify in that game. I didn't know what animal they were supposed to be. Um, the but are you saying that they were more human than the characters in Life is Strange?
Uh, I think so.
I That's kind of a leading question, because I remember when I was first seeing Life is Strange, the number one comment I kept seeing from people who were playing it was that they thought so many parts of the just day to day dialogue was cringy, like over hips, like very hipster. Like you had to believe this like core conceit that everyone at this high school, whether they were a geek or a jock, was also an art hipster and would get it. Um, and I think that was kind of hard to believe for a lot of people. The broad strokes of the story definitely like hit all of those big emotional marks and were believable, and you could definitely invest in them. But I would agree with you that the sort of the day to day of a Night in the Woods gave was really more down to earth. Really felt like you were having regular conversations with people. Um, I don't know. When I first engaged with it, it was something that no one else, none of my other friends were really into. I couldn't really get anyone else to invest in it. And, I'm a good little boy that never drinks alcohol and always, does what I'm supposed to do. So when I started randomly going to my friends yelling, "Hey everyone, let's go do crimes," people were not quite on board with the shift in behavior. But I guess that brings us to, talking about the game and what makes it different and unique, brings us to the second question, which is, so you said that the central lesson, the central takeaway that you got from the game was, at the end of everything, hold on to anything. And what exactly, or what sorts of things did the game do to really drive that message home and make it something that stuck with you? I guess sort of made it a part of your life motto.
Yes, well, like I said before, at the time of playing the game, I was in a very, very dark place, and I had basically nothing to do, nothing to live for. I had no goals, no plans. My friends were just drinking friends,
Mm,
basically, and I realized I had nothing to hold on to because I didn't have a good relationship with my parents as well. But the game kind of taught me that for example, like relationships are some of the most important things in life, and that you have to have relationships, and that, like I said, that it's some important to hold on to something, to whatever that is. It kind of helped me to set my goals. I want to do this, I want to do that in life, and it's not gonna happen overnight. So I have to work hard for that. And the how repetitive the game is, it helped me a lot to like set out like a foundation in my life, because my life had no foundation. I just, like I said, was just drinking and playing games and whatnot. And it helped me like establish a foundation in my life, and it also helped me that and taught me that doing like mundane and normal things, it's all right. Like, I was very hard on myself, and if I didn't do anything productive that day, I will be just mad and angry or sad. And it also taught me that it's okay to not do something productive absolutely every day, and it's okay to take some time off. But I like what you said, that the fitness instructor said that any exercise is better than nothing, right? Or something along the lines. And that's something that Night in the Woods kind of like taught me as well. Like, you have to do something. Just go out and do something, and start working on your goals, because for example, in the game, May just gets back from
right.
college, and she kind of wants to reconnect with people, and she has to work on that, and she has to work on being more open, being more acceptant, and also getting a job as well. That's
Yeah.
important.
I mean, when the game starts and May is coming back home, uh, it's, I guess the character very much assumes that uh, that everything is just the way it used to be or was before she left for college. And I guess she doesn't find that to be the case, and actually struggles with trying to make those like family connections again. And what she was expecting to be easy turned out to be just as hard as, the thing she was running away from.
Mhm.
And I think the fact that the game starts as in a situation where the the character and the player end up having to work for something that they assumed they wouldn't have to work for. I think that is kind of a valuable lesson in itself. It sort of lays the groundwork for, I guess, that ultimate lesson of you have to do something every day in order to make progress. But you said the game was rather repetitive in how that it accomplished that you were waking up, doing all the same beats, and going to sleep in exactly the same way multiple times. Now, a lot of games are actually criticized for having repetitiveness, for grindiness, for anything that isn't new or interesting or upping the player engagement with every next step. But I guess what you're saying is that the game actually uses that repetition to sort of mimic the real world process of what it takes to create stability and establish routine in your own life. In that it is an extremely slow process and that it can only be done through little bits at a time. Do you want to, or can you elaborate on that at all?
Uh, yes, even May's mom says something similar, that relationships or things or goals in life are like plants. You have to water them every day. They'll grow, they'll be beautiful eventually, but you have to water them every day. And well, since you like
Yeah.
BoJack Horseman, at the ending of season 2, I think it was the baboon that tells BoJack it gets
Yeah.
easier, but you have to do it every day. And damn, that's just, it's hard. But yeah, the game did motivated me to start doing something. I was a bit mad at the time because I was going to study in the States and I couldn't stay in the US, so I moved back to my country and I didn't want to do anything. But the game also helped me to like say, look, I'm gonna study this. I'm gonna move out to somewhere else eventually in the future. I'm gonna reconnect with my real friends, not my drinking friends, and I'm gonna start doing something else. Cleaning my room,
Yeah.
doing this or doing that, and like the repetitiveness. It was effective, at
That's
least for
good.
me.
I mean, I know just since we brought up my BoJack Horseman video, I've also dealt with anxiety in the past as you have. I don't know. I don't know to what degree. Um, but like I remember that episode of BoJack Horseman, and I kind of thought that the series was gonna that was a turning point for the series, and like I remember being very not upset with the writers, but upset with BoJack the character for not turning
Hmm.
around after that, like not taking that advice and still messing up in all the same ways. But I still love the show for where they took that. But I mean, that the weird thing about dealing with anxiety is that when you start you start talking to yourself in a very different way, that you are always holding yourself to a standard of productivity and expecting yourself to always like hit higher and higher goals all the time, constantly, never taking a break. And when you don't meet those goals, you really, I guess, internalize some very negative self talk. And then at the same time, you know that you're supposed to rest and actually get recuperation so that you can do things. And you try to rest, and then you start kicking yourself in the butt for not being productive. And then when you try to be
Yeah.
productive, you kick yourself in the butt for not resting well enough. And you never let yourself win. And I don't know, it's really hard to sort of get past that negative self-talk when dealing with anxiety. And I guess having a game like Night in the Woods that sort of creates a little bit of a little microcosm of an example of how it actually works. is, I guess, invaluable. That it's always very little things that don't look like a lot, but they're a lot. That really gets you to that point of feeling more stable, letting yourself have permission to relax and allowing that to fuel the things you actually want to do in the future.
Mhm.
Yes.
And oh, May also experiences like anxiety, uh, and some scenes in the game were very real. For example, when she's getting ready for the party, like when she's talking to
Mm-hmm.
herself in the mirror. I thought that was a very like a real moment that that has happened to me many times, and also those little moments that show, for example, May's anxiety, or for example, Greg's
Mm-hmm.
bipolar disorder. Things like that just make the game even more I guess real, more connected, more personal, and it's remarkable for a game that looks like it was made
Yeah.
in paint or
Um,
something.
I mean, the game really did a lot in terms of inclusivity, a lot of LGBT representation, but not just that, mental health representation. I think the new, I think the new fancy word for it is neurodiversity, is the catch-all term.
Hmm.
I only ran into that term like a few months ago, so it doesn't feel right in my mouth when I say neurodiversity yet, but I think I'll get there. Um, and I don't know, but I think it never. The game also never tokenized any of the different people that it was representing because, sort of going back to that core concept that you say is the takeaway of the game, it it made sure that every character was just going about their day-to-day lives, and the aspects of their personality, like whether or not they were gay or dealing with bipolar disorder, was never like put on display. It was never like the main
Hmm.
thing that everyone was talking about. It was just part of their lives and an aspect of the day to day, but it was never, you know, it was never shoved out there as like, this is the thing you need to look at now. It's just, this is just how the town is. And the town's going to progress one way or
Hmm.
another. And everyone's going to struggle with their own problems in their own situation. None are particularly remarkable. Everyone's struggles are normal. And I think that was really a really insightful choice on the part of the writers.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of games kind of take this idea, they kind of romanticize the idea that someone is dealing with mental problems, or someone has a different sexual preference or identity. And for example, going
Mm-hmm.
back to Life is Strange a bit, like there's a huge focus on Max and Chloe's
Oh, right.
relationship.
There was
And
so much focus on
they
like, hey, could be gay when he had the what was the name, Warren, the boy, and he was there
oh
as
yeah,
like
Warren.
option, but there was also like, but maybe gay, and it was so in your face in Life is Strange.
Yeah, they it was so in your face, and a lot of games and movies do this, but Night in the Woods doesn't, and that's what really I thought was really cool, because also May's a very
Mm-hmm.
androgynous kind of character, because when I first saw her, I thought she was a boy, and I was like, oh well, this is interesting. Or when you find out that Greg has a boyfriend, that Greg is gay, I was like, well, thank you for not
Yeah.
telling me like, hey, take a look at this character, he's gay. Like, wow, okay, I
it
can
it was
figure that out.
definitely,
Thank you.
it took
And
time, like, it was just through like, oh, they lived together, and then eventually they started talking to each other in a more or a very personal way, in their own dynamic, sort of, like when a couple is in a group and they just start talking back and forth with their own unique way of communicating. it was never look a rainbow flag. Let's wave it back and forth during the rock and roll segment. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, go ahead.
And oh, I was just gonna say that um, th- that I appreciate that the game doesn't tell you directly, and you eventually find out. For example, we find out that May is bisexual because she's talking about an
Mm-hmm.
old boyfriend, so you instantly assume she's straight. But eventually, with V, she talks about when they go to the college party. She says that she saw very pretty women in the party, and I was like, oh, so
Right.
she's bisexual. And another thing that I really liked was the character of Jackie. I think a lot of people hated her, but what I like about the character is that you don't know she's trans, but like someone mentions it like on the background, or like, yeah, when Jackie was a boy or something like that, and it's organic and
Mm-hmm.
it's well
For
done.
sure. Um, I would say I've always been really interested in androgynous characters just because uh, I find that a lot of game settings have absolutely no reason to hold themselves to the same like social norms that we have in our modern culture, because they take on either these fantastical settings or these settings that are significantly far flung in the future or on different planets, and their societies seem so intrinsically different than ours, but we do still seem to just kind of like assume a sort of pigeonhole of personality and behaviors. And the reason I like androgynous characters is because I think it creates the opportunity to just completely do away with those sorts of limitations and those assumptions and biases, because they're completely free from having to conform to any of them. Everything is just a projection of the
Hmm.
audience, and that doesn't dictate how the character is to behave. And so,
Hmm.
personally, I've always, like, even when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I try to create characters with the idea of them having an androgynous look, so that I can personally feel free from associating them with any sort of particular personality likes or dislikes, just as like a a mental exercise to make sure I'm creating an interesting and unique character, not a stereotype or an archetype. Yes.
And I'm a bit tired of the stereotype characters, and I think we're shifting away from that slowly, but we are. But we don't get many protagonists like Master Chief or Shepard or
Or any of the
the Doom guy,
somewhat
that.
tan, buzz-cut, brown-eyed soldier man from the from the
Yeah,
PlayStation 3 and
exactly.
Xbox 360 era. I guess a question I asked you before is, when you're looking at May as a character, uh, because we also talked about Fallout 4, uh, do you think that, well, do you see yourself as identifying as May as a character, or do you more identify with May as someone you're going along with for their own story?
More like going along with. Some situations have happened to me, and I kind of said, "Hey, I've been there," but not really. And I, well, a bit, but not entirely. I relate a bit more to B, but I appreciate that May can be this like well, androgynous character that a lot of people can maybe identify or maybe not. But I think she's a very, like, it's really easy to go along, uh, if that makes any sense. It's really easy to go along and to experience the whole ride with her. and
Do you
I
think
think
the
that's brilliant.
story of the game might have been improved if May was more of a player insert character, someone you could name or design to look in a way that you identify as?
Um, I think the game it's is fine as it is now, but I wouldn't say it's a bad idea or it's a bad thing, because in some games, for example, Fallout 4, we were talking about that. Um, like the story feels more personal because I get to name my character and kind of create a backstory and their appearance and stuff like that, and to a certain degree create a more personal like approach, a more personal story. But I think the game it's fine as it is. But let's say if the story is the same and we get to like create a character, I think the story will work as well. But some aspects are tied to
Mm-hmm.
May. For example,
Mm-hmm.
the androgynous design, or the mental health that she's problems that she's experiencing, the
Right,
dissociation,
right.
I believe it's called.
In your video
Yes.
about Night in the Woods, you actually highlighted something that I didn't pick up on at all. This dissociative disorder that May was having, because when you were, it was that scene where she was describing just like everyone just being shapes. Um, I had read
Mm-hmm.
that as just like clever metaphor and not so much like the character honestly expressing what the experience was like. Uh, is Are there other things that you can remember off the top of your head that sort of uh, demonstrate the dissociative nature of May's struggles that you noticed in the game?
Sure. She mentions that people were look like shapes when she had that
Mm-hmm.
accident with the kid and the baseball bat. And I was reading a bit about the that particular disorder. And what happens is that when you're under a lot of stress or a lot of or in a hard situation, you kind of disassociate yourself and everything just becomes like a
Okay.
bit blurry. It depends on the person, but I think that's emphasized on her dreams. There's a particular dream when she's just running around with a baseball bat,
Right.
basically just destroying everything. And in that particular section, in that particular scene, everything is just more simple. There are no shadows, there are no lights or anything. There are just shapes, very very simple shapes. And I think things like that just emphasize a bit, that thing that May's
There's definitely a
struggling with.
lot more to the game than I got or that I noticed from my original engagement with it. So like any opportunity to this is what I mean when I say you analyze games from a different perspective. You notice completely different things and actually go and research them. And that's what makes your channel so great, is that it's well informed about things that I
Thank you.
don't even think to go and get informed about. Um, but I don't know. I think that gets us pretty much to our conclusion here. Is there anything else that you want to talk about the game in particular, or anything you want to focus on?
um Let me think. Well, I just want to say that I appreciate that games like Night in the Woods exist, because those are more personal games or more real games, more personal projects. And I think we need more of those in the video game industry, not just AAA mindless
Absolutely agree.
shooters and stuff like that.
The rise of
Um,
indie and the we need smaller games, double A, as they were used to be called, games to come back.
yeah.
Uh, Little projects that can still be meaningful. Um, Well, I guess
Hmm.
that brings us to a close. I guess I want to go ahead and thank you, Dead Fox, so much for coming on and being my first guest for this series. It was absolutely invaluable to have you around to all of my subscribers. A link to Dead Fox's channel is going to be in the description, as well as a link to his Night in the Woods video. By all means, please take a look at that one as well. I don't know, do you have a suggestion for another video that you might think they would like?
Other than the Night in the Woods one, probably the Fallout 4 one, that it's called a therapeutic game, I think. Probably people
I think they
enjoy
will.
that. Probably,
I know I did.
And
So great. Well, it's nothing to do but say goodbye. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope to have you around for the next interview. Thank you again, Dead Fox. Hope we'll get to talk again real soon.
Thank you for your time.
And that's all. Thank you so much. And as always, stay true.